tried to preserve and spread the knowledge that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had given. And he utilized the same technique. He began printing books. In fact, he purchased printing presses, and he was producing from his own presses. And at one time, they even had a monthly newspaper and even a daily newspaper, giving news about events of the interest of the Vaishnavas. So, very enthusiastic. And of course, besides that, he was, again, printing the books. We get to know about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through Chaitanya Charitamrita. And this was published by, printed, published, and explained by Prabhupada, and was printed by the BBT. So that's our main source of information about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But before that, we should understand that nobody knew anything. When Bhaktivinoda Thakur was there, he heard about a book called Chaitanya Charitamrita. He asked everybody. Nobody had it. That's 150 years ago. They heard of the book. Nobody had seen a copy of it. So that was the condition of that time. Then Bhaktivinoda Thakur eventually he did find a copy, and then he printed it. So the knowledge got preserved, and then it spread. So it spread with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then Srila Prabhupada began spreading the same way. So this is Srila Prabhupada's contribution, was that he took the message and the enthusiasm of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and then he applied that to the time that he was there in India, existing in India, and then he spread it to the West. So that way he took up the mood that was there in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, because he understood the great value of this message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we see that Prabhupada went to the West, and then after that he traveled around the world, came back to India, and he was always vigorously preaching and translating works, which we published by the BBT. So in this way, he wanted to preserve and spread the message of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. After Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, then, still, we are obligated to continue that same move. Srila Prabhupada was a little bit disappointed because after the disappearance of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they didn't do much preaching. Within the lifetime of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he expanded the movement, so they had many, many centers all over India, and they actually had temples. Somehow or other, in spite of the fact that it was, Depression time, and ended up with, First World War, etc. They managed to expand the movement and establish centers in the major capital cities of India, which is remarkable. But after that, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati disappeared, they didn't expand anymore. So Srila Prabhupada was disappointed in that. They barely maintained what they had. So Srila Prabhupada, he expanded also, but then he disappeared. So we have to maintain what was there, but we cannot just do that. We have to also continue to expand at all times. So that was the mode of Srila Prabhupada, and we continue with that to the present day. We keep trying to expand somehow or other. We can expand in different ways. Of course, the main thing is, okay, we've got to make a new center here, a new center there. That's one way of doing it. And of course, that eventually becomes temples. So making more temples is one way of expanding. But of course, it's not the only way to expand. Lord Chaitanya himself didn't make any temples, but yet he expanded the movement. So we should not limit ourselves to simply making a temple. Never. So we can expand the movement by distributing the literature. Of course, Prabhupada made BBT for that, and it's going to distribute those books. So by distributing the knowledge, distributing Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavad, Chaitanya, etc., we expand the movement. Even if there is no temple, we distribute the books. Who was the told the story? Russia. The Russian devotees were there on the train somewhere in Siberia or Vladivostok or whatever, on the train. And then they just had some old man on the train. And what was he doing? He was distributing copies of Bhagavad Gita in Russian, which he had Xeroxed. He didn't know the devotees existed actually, but he said, well, I got inspired to, do this. Prabhupada was always saying that we should distribute this book and it will save people. So he got very inspired by Bhagavad Gita, and he was just distributing on the train by himself, alone, without any devotees. Didn't know the devotees at a temple, etc. So somehow or other, we should become inspired to distribute that knowledge, and we can do that through the books. So that's one way of expanding the movement through books. In the modern age, something remarkable has happened. Everything is gone electronic. Everything is gone on the internet. So people have electronic books now. And when COVID started, of course, everybody thought this is a big disaster. But then devotees found it needs to preach by internet. So in this way, devotees have established a new method of preaching. It does not require books at all. It doesn't even require temples. Doesn't require anything. You just have a little room there, and you put your camera on it, and you have a Zoom meeting, and you preach that way. And we may think, well, it's very limited, but through that method, in India, for instance, in our temple there, two devotees there, a couple, they did some programs on Bhagavad Gita and expanded. So they ended up getting like 15,000 people taking Bhagavad Gita courses. And they didn't charge for it, but actually they made a lot of money of it because people donated money. So, and in Mangalore, one devotee there who started programs. He got enthusiastic because he saw what they were doing in Chennai. So he started a program there, and then he expanded that program. He had all those devotees in the temple that were preaching online, and they were preaching in Bengali, Telugu, Kannada, Malayali, Tamil, English, Hindi. They developed the preachers doing all these different languages, and they got like 20,000 people or something in their programs also. They also didn't ask for donations, but people donated, and with that money, they were able to build a temple within 3 years, just on donations that came in from internet preaching. They were able to purchase a piece of land and build a temple, and they opened the temple also. So this is a different way of preaching, through internet, modern technology, innovation, whatever. So there are unlimited ways in which we can expand the movement. Of course, we do need some foundation, some place where we can preach from. So that's the function of a temple. So even in Mangalore, eventually they built a temple, even though technically they could have kept expanding just with internet preaching, whatever. But they also established a temple so they could centralize their teaching and preaching and invite people there as well. So I give these examples just to say that the opportunity for preaching and expanding is unlimited, and there's new inventions coming up all the time, so we can take advantage of that. And this way we can please Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The other point, of course, is that we should understand just what are we preaching. As I mentioned, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he discovered the knowledge at a certain time, and then said, wow, this is such wonderful knowledge, everybody in the world should do this, because this will solve all the problems of the world. So, that knowledge is there, and when we preach, it means we're giving out knowledge. To do that, we have to understand the knowledge ourselves. We have to appreciate just what Lord Chaitanya was saying, and what he's telling people to do. So we also have to read the books, in other words. So Srila Prabhupada wanted us to distribute the books, he also wanted us to read the books. So we do have to get that knowledge. With that knowledge, then we can preach properly. So it's spreading the movement very good, and we can have all sorts of means of doing that. But behind that, we have to have the appreciation of that knowledge itself. What is it? Why is it valuable, etc. So that requires a little bit of effort on our part. That means we do have to read, we have to study, we have to think, we have to discuss, and then we can begin to appreciate and practice. So, if we can appreciate the value of this knowledge and put it into our own practice, this means that we begin the process of bhakti, and we develop that bhakti as example was given of planting a seed, and then we have to develop that seed into a plant, and then the plant should be carefully cultivated till it produces a flower and a fruit. But that's our responsibility. So preaching is good, but then this other thing is going on, that is cultivating the bhakti within ourselves. That's our responsibility. And if we do that, then the preaching also goes on very nicely. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says the essence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement is twofold. One is, of course, Jive Doya, give out mercy to others. That means we preach. And you see that this is what Lord Chaitanya was doing. He was going around saying, everybody chant Hari Bol, Hari Bol. So, preaching is very obvious. And we see Sri Prabhupada is encouraging everybody to do that. He himself did that. But then, that's one principle. But the other is Namaruchi. That which means the individual devotee has to develop a taste for the name. Individual has to cultivate bhakti, which is, of course, what Lord Chaitanya is teaching, and if we're preaching, that's what we're preaching. So the individual has to develop this taste for the name, develop a taste for bhakti, and for worshiping Krishna. In other words, the devotee is responsible for cultivating the seed of bhakti that's planted and making it grow up to develop leaves and flowers and finally fruit. So those are the two aspects of Lord Chaitanya's movement. Preaching on the one hand to give the knowledge to others, and personally cultivating the bhakti creeper based upon the knowledge of the God, so that it develops nicely. And with that experience, then we can preach to others and give that knowledge out in a very wonderful way. So these are the two aspects of Lord Chaitanya's movement that Bhaktivinoda Thakur has stated. And we see that's exactly what Srila Prabhupada also did. He preached, but he spent a lot of time writing books, translating, making purports, so that people could appreciate that knowledge themselves. So we should never forget this principle. So therefore we do expand, but we also simultaneously cultivate bhakti ourselves. And strive for the final result, which is that fruit on the tree, Krishna prema. So if we remember this principle in our preaching, and then we can be very, very successful. So Srila Prabhupada often stressed that, yes, we preach, etc., but he also stressed that we do sadhana. Yeah? So we follow the principle, we chant 60 rounds, we worship the deity, etc. So we have regular ways in which we nourish the tree of bhakti. So the two things must go together at all times. And this will guarantee our success. So once we do this, we establish reaching mood, and we establish ourselves steadily in the process of bhakti. We're quick to expand the movement very, very nicely. So throughout the world, the movement has expanded. It also goes through phases, and that's because people change, society changes, and devotees change also. So throughout the world, we have periods of growth, periods where it slows down, then periods of growth again, whatever. So we have to also become aware of the trends of the modern world and society, etc. But we should never give up in any case. And we should always strive to examine the situation we're in and analyze the best way in which we can penetrate and communicate with people at that time. Even in business, they say that don't adapt your business to the present day, it will fail. So you have to keep innovating, adapting in any business. So those companies which are on the top 10 companies or whatever, this is what they do. They're always investigating what is the present world, what is the present market, what do people like, what do they dislike, etc. And it keeps changing. Within a few years it keeps changing, so therefore we have to change our strategy, we have to change our marketing, we have to change our products all the time. I was hearing yesterday Tesla, very famous, went out in the world and top electronic cars, etc. But they're saying actually, now problem is they got so many competitors. China is a big competitor. And Tesla wasn't thinking about what's happening around him. So now you got all the competitors, they're coming with better products, better batteries, better facilities, etc. At a cheaper price. So that his products go down like this. One reason it's going down. So if we're not aware of the situation at the present time and we adapt to it, then we have problems, business of course. But the same is there in preaching. We have to adapt ourselves to the present situation and see what people are thinking and doing and whatever like that. And of course, people's likes and dislikes change all the time. But bhakti is such that it's eternal. So that cannot change. You cannot change bhakti into something else. Bhakti remains as it is. But we have to see how to let people understand it and appreciate it, take faith in it. That's all. Different ways we can do that. So, therefore, we have to adapt to the situation and teach according to the present moment of society. And that way we can survive and expand. Fortunately, ISKCON has gone through many phases and problems, etc., has adapted somewhat to the situation. Most spiritual movements, after the demise of the founder, may continue for 10 years. Maybe a little bit longer, but they don't really expand after that point. And a lot of them disappear. So okay, all the movements were there in the 1970s when Prabhupada was there. We have all TM movement and Muktananda and Yogananda, so many other groups were there. Most of them disappeared. There's still TM, but it's not so evident anymore. So, same with companies. Those companies, after the original founder disappears, they usually disappear after 10 years or so. It's very surprising. After 20 years, you still have a company that continues as it was previously. And same with the spiritual movement, 20 years is surprising. But since Prabhupada has been over 40 years, still it's there. ISKCON is still there. So that has been very surprising to many people in the university that study religion. They were kind of shocked that it's going to continue after 40 years after the disappearance of Prabhupada. And it's still expanding. So something good has happened with the devotees, that they're able to preserve the movement and also expand the movement. So this is one advantage that we have, that we're able to survive for 40 years or more after Prabhupada's disappearance and continue. So we should continue again with that mode, and not just say 40 years, we should continue for hundreds of years, and Prabhupada said thousands of years. But it requires the energy of the devotees. And of course the devotees are not eternal either. And we get old and we pass away, and then new devotees take the role, whatever. So whatever energy we have, we expend, and then we have to encourage younger people to take up the role also and become enthusiastic and expand the movement. So this is the vision that we have to have: how to adapt to the present, how to expand in the present moment, how to expand by passing on the enthusiasm to other younger people so they can continue to expand it. At the same time, we have to understand what we're trying to communicate, the value of what we have, that knowledge that we have. That means our personal cultivation is that we do. If we have this nice combination, we can go on, be innovative, and at the same time cultivate our bhakti. And with energy,
how to make people understand and instill faith in others. How do we do that? How do we instill faith in others? How do we change someone else's perspective?
Of course, we also have a opera, don't preach to the faithless at all. So if people be faithless, whatever, then we can't really say anything to them. In that case, we have another strategy. For the faithless, how do we spread without preaching? If we preach, it's an offense. If we don't preach, they don't give the mercy, so we're stuck, and Lord said be merciful even to the demons or whatever. So what do? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that for those people that don't have faith and we can't preach to them, all we can do is indirectly preach. How do we do that? We let them hear the holy name. We don't preach about it. Let them hear Hare Krishna, Kirtan, whatever. Give them prasadam. Don't tell them it's prasadam. Just tell them it's nice food, it's healthy for you, whatever. So without their being aware of it, they get exposed to Krishna consciousness somehow or other, through mantra, through food, or whatever other means. By that exposure, gradually they could develop faith. They may not fructify in this lifetime, it may take several lifetimes, but at least the beginning is there. And in some cases, in this lifetime itself, they begin to change and they develop faith. So that's one strategy for people that have no faith at all, whatever. All we can do is expose them to Krishna consciousness. That's also why we have festivals, etc. So people get exposed to Krishna consciousness without their really knowing. It's just a fun occasion for them, but nevertheless they get some advantage from that. So that's for the people with no faith at all. Other people are kind of neutral, they have a little interest or whatever. So to those people we can preach, but there's also degrees of favorability, and accordingly we have to preach a little different. So there are all sorts of variables there. And expert preacher will have to use his intelligence, or his or her intelligence, to decide what we can actually say and present to a person who's at a certain stage. So this requires intelligence on the part of the devotee. So the devotee, of course, also has to have enough knowledge, which is based not just on memorization, but two things: realization and intelligent analysis. So we do need some intelligence. We can't just read scripture to everybody. They're not, they won't understand it. We have to understand the principles behind the scripture, the statements of scripture. What do they actually mean? And, so we say, okay, practice devotion, worship Krishna. What does that mean? So we have to be a little more explicit when we tell people what to do, and not just be a devotee. So, in other words, we do have to use our intelligence. So this actually is stated by Swami in Nectar Devotion, that the best devotee is the devotee who has profound knowledge of scripture, and also has logical ability to analyze it nicely so he can present it to people so it looks reasonable, at least it doesn't look fanatical. So we have to also use our intelligence to present things to people who don't know anything. We have to use our intelligence to present in such a way that it looks very reasonable for people to do. So it does require our intelligence.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the class. So that in our Guru Parampara, so Srila Prabhupada is there. After that, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is coming. After that, Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj is coming. Then Bhaktivinoda Thakur is there. So some Guru Parampara is calling as a Thakur, some are Babaji. So how to understand this Guru Tattva? Could you please? Some are in a Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is there. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is there. In between, Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj is there. So how can understand this Guru Tattva, like Babajis are there, Thakur are there, how to?
Well, the basis of the relationship for us is teachings and inspiration. Of course, you could trace a line to Diksha. And tracing a Diksha line means you trace your mantra. not Hare Krishna, but your mantra, which we get a second initiation. So who you got that from, you can trace the Diksha line. And that was, it's a common among many groups. So even today you go to Bengal and you say Guru, and what's your parampara? We'll trace a Diksha line. Who got the mantra from who got it, like that, and trace it back that way. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur didn't do that. He didn't trace the Diksha line at all. He traced the line of teaching instead. One reason for that, of course, Diksha is there, but the main purpose of Diksha mantra is for deity worship. But Lord Chaitanya's movement is not primarily deity worship. It is Nam Sankirtan. And Harinama, chanting Hare Krishna mantra, does not require Diksha at all. It's free. We just go in the street, chant Hare Krishna, you don't take Diksha for it, chant Hare Krishna. So, therefore, there's no parampara for chanting Hare Krishna in the sense of a Diksha. That's only for the deity mantra. So we have a Diksha parampara for that. But we don't trace that. Of course we could, but we don't. In other words, Bhaktisiddhanta, Prabhupada got from Bhaktisiddhanta, he got a Diksha mantra. Bhaktisiddhanta got from Gorkishore. Gorkishore didn't get a Diksha mantra from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He already had a Diksha. But we could trace a Diksha of Gorkishore to some other Babaji, and we go back to Baladev Vidyabhushan or something like that. So you can trace, but Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati didn't trace the Diksha line at all. He traced the Shiksha line only. So, Gorkishore Das Babaji got inspiration from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we got inspiration from Jagannath Babaji, but they were not a Diksha line at all like that. So we're only tracing teaching and inspiration. So that's a Shiksha line instead. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur preferred to emphasize the Shiksha line rather than the Diksha line. And that's one reason, of course, is that we're more interested in the teachings and how they're transmitted along with the chanting Hare Krishna, and less interested in tracing a Diksha line for a mantra for deity worship. So our interest is more in the teaching and in chanting Hare Krishna. So therefore he gave us a Shiksha line instead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the class. This is just a follow-up on 2 questions ago by Mataji, sir. In terms of faith, I think when Prabhupada started the movement, a lot of the initial devotees had pure faith in Prabhupada. That's why they sort of kept continuing and joined the movement. And maybe after Prabhupada left, their faith sort of died because the only person that they had faith in, who was Prabhupada, was gone from the material world. So would you say that it's more important to have faith in Guru and authority, or would you say it's more important to have faith in Krishna, who's like God?
I have more faith in Guru than in Krishna.
Sorry. Are they both important?
Oh, okay. Well, yes, obviously both are important. But the problem is that if Guru disappears and the faith disappears, then you give up the movement. That's not very good. So the Guru is there as a medium to, funnel the Shakti of Krishna to an individual. But the Guru may not be the one Guru. It could be many persons, in fact, who can give you inspiration. So they could be act as Guru. So that person, even if they do disappear, you have that basis, you have that inspiration already. That's eternal. Nobody can take that away from you. So you should not think that if the Guru disappears, then everything is finished. You've already got the inspiration. It's up to you to grow the plant, so to speak. So, as I said, Chaitanya Charitamrita said that by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, you get the seed of bhakti. You get the inspiration to begin. But then, you have to grow the plant. You have to cultivate the seed and make it, water it, and grow it. It's not that the Guru does all that or Krishna does all that. You have to do it. So you get the seed, you get the mercy, you get the inspiration from Krishna and Guru. Then you have to do the work yourself. So whether the Guru is there or not, you still continue. Okay? So both are important because usually the mercy is not given directly by Krishna to individuals like that. When Krishna is personally present, of course, he does that. But when he's not there, then usually the mercy of Krishna comes through devotees. So through devotees, we get the inspiration. That's ultimately coming from Krishna, but through the devotees. So that makes the devotee or the guru very important. But at the same time, we can't separate that from Krishna and say guru is more important because he's actually just channeling Krishna's Shakti himself. So both important.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for a beautiful class. You just mentioned that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur did not emphasize as much on Diksha. He emphasized on the Shiksha part more. So in the current situation in ISKCON, if somebody has accepted a spiritual master in their heart and they have not gotten initiated, but they are doing all the devotional service in all the ways, of course without initiation they can't do the deity worship in the temple, but they're doing it at home. And if they have managed to follow all the regulative principles, and in this lifetime if they pass on, does that mean that they will still reach the ultimate destination eventually if they have not taken formal Diksha and Parampara, but have all still accepted a guru in their heart and are following his Vani in ISKCON?
Yeah, so no problem. If you look in Chaitanya Charitamrita there, it says, by chanting the holy name you get all perfection. And it also says, Harinam does not depend on Diksha. So, theoretically, yes, it's to just chant the holy name and read the scripture or whatever, and of course be associated with devotees, get inspiration from devotees, whatever, practice sincerely, then eventually get to Krishna. So that's direct statement. At the same time, we should not avoid, of course, I don't want to have any diksha or gurus or whatever, formally, but we should not purposely avoid that. And if we look in our parampara, then we do see that the majority did take initiation. Lord Chaitanya took initiation, Nityananda took initiation, Advaita Acharya took initiation, Vishnu Thakur took initiation, Bhaktisiddhanta Swami took initiation, Gaura-Kishore took initiation. They all took initiation. We can of course ask why, since ultimately you don't really need it for getting Krishna prema and going to Krishna. One answer, of course, can be that we don't want to break tradition, and that there is a system there, according to Pancharatra. We're not rejecting Pancharatra also. Of course, another reason is that if you want to do deity worship, you need the mantra, so that you need it. But if you're not going to do deity worship again, then you wouldn't need it. But another reason would be that generally those people who aren't chanting, generally they would also do some deity worship, because it's one of the 5 principal angas of bhakti, so you would probably do it in most cases. So therefore, in that case, you would take Diksha. But actually, in absolute sense, no, you wouldn't need it. So we have a person like Haridas Thakur. Did he take initiation or not? We don't know, but nobody really mentions it much. But he's a Namacharya. And he didn't do any worship. In fact, it was probably, if he did, probably they would throw rocks at him or something. But he was chanting the holy name. So he's Namacharya. So perfection by chanting Hare Krishna, not by doing anything else. Lord Chaitanya took Diksha, but he didn't actually emphasize it in his preaching. He said, chant the holy name, that's the Jugadharma. So therefore, in that sense, yeah, Harinam is independent of everything. You can get perfection that way.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for the class. I have a question kind of following up from what you just told us. Do you think there's room for individual, like subjective parts within our movement, or do you think it's very linear in the sense that obviously the Lord has given us many ways to approach Him, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as Sri Radha Krishna. There's many ways through Lord Jagannath and so on.
Yeah.
And people have their own subjective preferences in terms of what do they resonate with. So do you think that it's okay to indulge that, or do you think there's one final truth which at your level you arrive at?
Oh, well, in terms of the truth, we can't change the scripture. We can't change the conclusion of scripture. For instance, we say, okay, Krishna is Swami Bhagavan, he's the ultimate object of worship, and he has a certain form, a certain color, so we can't start changing all of that. So that the basics, the tattva, we have to keep it taught kind of intact at all times. But definitely each jiva is individual, so we can't put him in a certain mold and say you have to do like this or do like that ultimately. It's that jiva is an individual and he has his own personal relationship with the Lord. It may not even be with Krishna ultimately. It may be with Ramchandra or Nrsimhadev or Vishnu. So we can't say you have to worship Krishna. If you don't, we'll kick you out. So Maharaj Gupta was a Ram worshipper, and Vachitani says, worship Krishna. And he came back and said, I can't. And Vachitani said, okay, fine. Very good. Because it was his individual preference and his conviction on that. So we have room for individuality also, as long as it doesn't go beyond scriptural norms and whatever like that. Of course, the opposite is that let's be real free. And this is why Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Prabhupada criticized the Sahajya. So, yeah, we believe in Krishna, we believe in Bhakti, we believe in Kirtan, but we're going to do things which are not according to Scripture. So therefore, we reject those things also. So there's a limit on how far we can be free in our individuality, etc. There's some scriptural norms we have to follow.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I'm wondering, with this emphasizing the teacher rather than the Diksha Guru historically, what are we called to do? What are we supposed to do in our positions now, and I guess as modern devotees? You might take Diksha and you may feel distant from a Diksha Guru, physically or spiritually, and you may have a more prominent teacher, local to yourself.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, if we were to present our own parampara, should we present it with our Diksha Guru first, or should we present it with the person who is our primary teacher?
Yeah, that's very interesting because we see that up until Prabhupada it's a shiksha line. So theoretically, we can present a shiksha line also for future, the disciples if they want, they could do that shiksha line. I don't think anybody would really criticize for that because we're just following the example of, Srila Prabhupada like Saraswati Thakur. And it also is philosophically, okay, fine, that we can emphasize the person who's given us the most spiritual inspiration. And it may not be the Diksha Guru, it may or may not be, but technically the Diksha Guru is one that just gives you the mantra for deity worship, but the person who inspires you by teaching an example or whatever may be someone completely different. And so if we get that inspiration, I think it has to be accepted. And Krishna accepts it, so then no problem with doing that. So we may emphasize the Diksha Guru or the Shiksha Guru or two Shiksha Gurus or whatever. It's a very flexible system. Whoever gives us the information, we can emphasize that person the most.
Great, Maharaj. Thank you so much for the wonderful class and for your darshan again. Maharaj, just one quick question on, we've got so many sampradayas like Shri Sampradaya and Barka Sampradaya, etc. So, just to understand, what are your thoughts on understanding, Maharaj, that there's a prediction that they will be amalgamated in the near future, and they will work together. So, anything, Maharaj, you would like to comment on that?
Someone's made a prediction like that?
They will be, I think I've heard that they will be.
I haven't heard that prediction. But in any case, those sampradayas are considered to be eternal. They have their founders like Brahma and Shiva and Lakshmi centers whether those lines of teaching are kind of eternal. So even if they were to, they certainly don't have to be enemies to cooperate together, but I don't think they're going to merge together into one thing. If it is, then it's temporary, because again, the line should continue in the day of Brahma, the next day of Brahma, etc. So it will continue. As far as one reason for the Sampradaya, of course, is that we're all Vaishnavas, all believe in the Supreme Lord, but the emphasis on Buddha worship may be different. They may say Vishnu, we say Krishna, and of course, all of us say Krishna, and the Bhakti say Krishna. The Sri Sampradaya says Vishnu, and the Madhva Sampradaya say Vishnu. So a little bit of a difference there. Apart from that, there's also a philosophical difference, slight philosophical difference. We all believe, okay, Krishna is our Supreme Lord is God, and then we have a Jiva, another Tattva, we have material energy. They're all real, but everything is the surrender of the Supreme Lord. The process is fine. We all agree. So basic Tattva is the same. But the details may be different. In terms of philosophy, we have Advaita, Vishishta Advaita, Dvaita Advaita, Achinta Advaita. So we have slightly different philosophies. Right? So those Sampradayas based on those philosophies and the particular object of worship would unlikely not merge together. Certain individuals from that Sampradaya, they go to the other Sampradaya, whatever, but the Sampradaya itself will probably remain intact.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Just one question. Thank you for this wonderful Shiksha today. You are mentioning about adaptability, how every organization should adapt to be relevant to the worldwide world at large. Now that we're building a new temple that's coming up very fast, so what adaptability would you recommend for this temple? We got a chance to do things from scratch. We're not stuck with something we can do. We can be innovative, creative. So we have the recommendations for us. Especially I'm thinking of attracting more local Western people.
Yeah. So that is also a challenge we see in many places. ISKCON grows up and then it becomes very strong in places where there's strong Indian communities. So we end up with a lot of financial support and a lot of devotees from the Indian communities in many countries like America and England and whatever. But unfortunately, you don't attract the local population, and that's maybe the majority at the moment anyway. So a problem is there, and therefore we do have to find means of attracting all people, not just Indians. It's easy, of course, to attract Indians more than others because they know what Bhagavad Gita already, and what the Sama, they know who Krishna is already. So you've got an advantage there, but we do have to modify, or let's say, find techniques by which we can attract all people, because this movement is not an Indian movement, it's an international movement, and it should be attractive to everybody. So we have to figure out what is the attractive, because Krishna and Kirtan is going to attract everybody. And we can have to utilize a little bit of intelligence to do that, but certainly we can find ways of doing it. So of course there are experiments, people are doing different things in different places to do this, and we can continue to do that. We should understand that the name of Krishna is unlimited, so there's unlimited ways in which we can present it, so that we can get people and make them serious about Krishna consciousness. So if you're establishing a new center or whatever, then you have opportunity to think about experiments or whatever, give some sort of presentation which will be attractive to people in general, not just to Indians. So that's something you have to think about very carefully. But definitely can be done, because there are people all around the world who have a need for Krishna, but we have to discover and get excited about that need.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. We're talking about the Guru, and many questions were asked. So there's a little bit of doubt.
The Bhagavad Gita talks about the disciplic succession, and and to chant Hare Krishna mantra, we don't need formalized diksha. then why would Prabhupada establish this? Like he would have given that, okay, you chant Hare Krishna and just no need to take the Diksha. So there must be a purpose to establish this Diksha. Otherwise, everyone say that, oh, I don't need Diksha, I'll just continue because I consider myself as, inside my heart, someone as a guru, and then continue like that. So there's a little bit of doubt in my mind.
Yeah. So, of course, that, as I said, that Diksha system has been there. It's actually quite a contradictory rules. On the other hand, we have Kirtan introducing Kirtan, which is not contradictory, and it's beyond all the rules, etc. So, but yet, nevertheless, he did combine the two things together. So, therefore, that's one reason why the Diksha continues, and devotees after Vajrayana continue this process. Vajrayana to Diksha, and then after that they continue that Diksha line. So nothing wrong with that, as I said, because it is one of the major rangas of bhakti and deity worship, so you can continue like that. But maybe the danger, and that's why Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, so he didn't trace the Diksha line at all. Of course, he gave Diksha, but then he didn't trace the Diksha line at all. Why? It looks like a little bit contradictory. So the reason I would think is that he doesn't want to overemphasize the Diksha. Because in doing so, we make a ritual and a formalization of everything. So you take Diksha, okay, I'm saved like this, so it's kind of like taking baptism and you're saved or whatever, the Christian scripture like that. So ultimately, we don't want to emphasize too much. It's there, but it's there for a certain purpose. And maybe one is tradition and the other is deity worship. But we also don't depend upon that as the measure of our progress. I'm initiated, okay, I'm better than this person because I'm not initiated. So this is that. Teaching is, and following the teachings is more important than simply getting a ceremony and getting a name. Perhaps that's the reason why. But nevertheless, we don't want to break tradition also, so we continue the process. And we should not overemphasize it. And invest more in it than actually there is. If we look at all the statements that are quoted about Guru, you have to worship Guru as God, by worshiping Guru like God, then all the scriptures are revealed, meaning of scriptures revealed, all these are Upanishadic statements. If you look at those statements, they're not about Diksha at all. They're about Shiksha Gurus. And they're all quoted by Jiva Goswami and Bhakti Siddhanta. And he talks about Diksha. This is actually Shiksha. The Gurus are Shiksha Gurus, not Diksha Gurus. So all this worshiping Guru is actually associated with the Shiksha Guru. Okay.
I want some enlightenment on my recent experience with a devotee that I came to know that the person said me that if you want to be in a congregation, you have to do either service or you need to donate something. It's really a quite shocking experience for me. So, because we all know how Prabhupada is merciful and I know what to glorify him. And he just wants, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu only wanted to chant only. But now, as we are all our conditioned soul and we are putting our conditioned mind in that to run the Krishna conscious movement also. Yeah. So I want some enlightenment how we can motivate ourselves to be in this movement.
Yeah. So there's different levels of participation, different levels of commitment, etc. And nothing can be forced or demanded or whatever like that. And there's no price also. So, whatever we do with a devotional heart is accepted by Krishna. At the same time, we do have an organization, and then we define certain standards for certain types of people. So, if you follow 4 principles, then you make initiation, so that's one standard there. that is the type of standard, but that also doesn't measure your ultimate advancement. It's one way of doing things, and you can identify with it, just like you take different courses and you get to 8 standard, 10 standard, 12 standard, you graduate and you go to college. So we got little markers there to emphasize that. But it may not indicate your real understanding, or if you're, if you're a genius or not. It may not indicate that at all. So similarly, these things are there as markers within our society to a certain standard, or it's convenient in one sense, but it's not an ultimate mark of our devotion. So that we should understand. So when we are in the movement, then of course we are expected to follow the rules, the basic rules or whatever. And of course, as I said, there's certain standards for different types of membership. There's casual membership, okay, you just chant Hare Krishna when you want to, whatever. When you're more serious, then you chant a certain number of rounds, and you may follow regulated principles, that's another standard. And then you may take initiations, another standard. So those is all voluntary. And if you don't want, you stay at the standard, and you stay like that, and nobody can complain. So similar, we can serve in different ways. Our service, of course, always chanting Hare Krishna, so we can just do that and do nothing else. Or if we want to, we could serve in other ways. We could cook prasadam or whatever like this, serve prasadam, or do different things like that. It's all voluntary, of course. But if we want to, dedicate more time, then we can do that. So according to our circumstance, our time, and whatever, then we have certain levels of voluntary service we do. So it's all based on our own will, our own determination, our own freedom of choice.
Hare Krishna, I think we should time is running out. I would like to thank His Holiness Bhanu Swami Maharaj for coming here and giving us valuable shiksha. Thank you, Maharaj, for emphasizing the points of Namaruchi and Jivadaya as 2 important components of our service to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for reiterating that. And Maharaj also, most of you know, he came to the temple land today.